Thanks for staying with us. So recently, the Lagos State Polytechnic and Ogunseya College of Education were upgraded to universities, and we have the Special Advisor on Education, Honorable Tokunbo Wahab, to tell us why. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. So recently, the National Universities Commission recognized and gave you the letter of recognition of these two universities.
Gave the governor.
Gave the governor. The letters of recognition for these two universities. It says Lagos State Government, let me see, the Lagos State University of Science and Tech, yes, and University of Education. Yes. Now, why these two specific universities?
Now, let me make a correction. We have three institutions that have become two. The Ogunseya College of Education at Ijaniki and the Michael Otodala College of Primary Education at Noforija Ekwe merged and transmitted to be in Lagos State University of Education. Okay. To award degrees in education, strictly specialized.
Really?
I love that.
Now, for the other leg of it, Lagos State Polytechnic, Ikorodu, will now be known as Lagos State University of Science and Technology. Okay. So those are the two new universities.
Let's start with the University of Education. Yes. Why was there a need to have a University of Education? Especially because there are other degrees out there. Like, I mean, why University of Education particularly?
I'll give this answer with data and facts. Okay. The past few years, the need for NCE graduates had declined drastically. Now, we as a state, we've been recruiting teachers by this governor for the past 2.5 years, over 8,000 teachers. How many of them have we recruited with NCE certificates? So the minimum you have to do is B.Ed. If you have no foundation in education, you have to go and have a postgraduate in education that will have a link or a nexus to education. So we have specialized teachers teaching our kids now in Lagos State. Fantastic. And we can speak to the result in the past 1 year, from 37% to 79% in WAEC. It's unprecedented leap. This year's WAEC. Yeah. So, and I thank the governor and the Commissioner for Education for focusing on that. Now, let me come to what we have on ground. We have UTME that tells you the best of the applicants will go to the universities. The second best will go to the Polytechnic. The worst of them will now have to just look for College of Education, and they want to be teachers. Secondly, we have a subvention for the two colleges before now. Annually, it goes to 5.5 billion. And the student population combined is less than 4,500. So the numbers are there. So what do we have to do? By the way, from the academic brief, they have 126 PhD holders combined in the two. Ogunseya with 86 PhD holders. Noforija Ekwe with 35. So they can start off as a university.
They have qualified hands.
Qualified hands. The academic has shown that. And then you have them now going to JAMB. JAMB said, okay, good. What you have to do is give us your academic brief as you submitted to NUC. We've done that. And last week, we were mandated to place the advert for the start-off programs. And the two colleges that are now University of Education will start off with 65 programs, 65 from 2022-23 academic session. JAMB listed us this weekend. Wow. And if you go to the JAMB portal now, after Ladu Kakitola, you see Lagos State University of Education, then you see Lagos State University of Science and Tech, then you now see LASU, our own professional university. Fourthly, you have LASU. It's been there for almost 40 years. Conventional university with limited carrying capacity. JAMB is doing admission now. I'll give you 4 examples. For you to study law in LASU, there are just 180 slots. 180 slots. They have over 1,000 applicants. Now, from the 180 for admission, what happens to the remnants? They go back home and try their luck. For medicine, they have just 100 slots to admit. Over 1,000 applicants. Out of the 100, 10 slots will go to direct entry applicants. Okay. For dentistry, they have just 10 slots.
What?
Yes. And then for nursing, 30.
So obviously, we're leaving a lot of our children behind.
That is it. With a population of 22 million or more. When LASU was established, we had about 6.7 million people in Lagos. Now we have 22 million. We have a limited carrying capacity for the university. And then we have institutions that are not doing so well because of the needs of this time, this day, and we have said to ourselves, what do we have to do? Let us use data to upgrade them, and we've done that.
When we look at this University of Education that a lot of times when we hear of, institutions that have been upgraded, many times they come with inadequate, either the lecturers are not properly qualified, infrastructure is inadequate. What does this university now have on ground concerning qualified lecturers and infrastructure?
I gave you the numbers, 126 to start, 126. I've not mentioned the management at that level. Lecturers, 126, far more than enough. 65 programs to start. And we are also very deliberate, according to the governor. Let it be very clear. We could have started with our year 2 director. We said, no, let us grow organically from the foundation. Let it be very strong. So now, with 126, by next week, we're going to have in place active management structure. So they can start interfacing, depending when we don't the best from anywhere in the world to manage these 2 institutions for us. Because clearly, my principal, the governor, have made it clear, we must build a very strong foundation.
Okay, so I'm also talking about lecture halls. I'm talking
They are all in place. What we also want to do is add more to what they have on ground. Because as they grow, don't forget, this existing structure will still be in place to graduate the last students that was admitted last year, or even this year.
Oh, so they won't be upgraded to the students that were admitted.
No, you can't. You know why? It's like a contract.
Okay.
When you come in, you sign a contract, and there was a different regulator then. For the colleges, they used to be under the National Council for Colleges of Education, NCCE. Now they are under NUC. So the NCCE will regulate them depending when they graduate the last students.
Okay. So even the 2022-2023 session I was starting.
Yes, but they won't admit for the 2022-2023 session. They will not admit as colleges of education. They will admit as a university of education.
That's it.
Okay, so we're spending a lot of time on the education because it's a major worry, and it's something that if we get right, it would influence every other area of our development as a state. Tying it down to incentives, what are the incentives the government is putting to get people to go into these college of education? Because many people know that jobs would fall. This is where the jobs flow through. So what is the incentive Lagos State is giving to ensure that people will be eager to apply to your newly established University of Education? Maybe there'll be a job.
Let me even add to that, because one of the problems we're having in government is that the teachers, we don't have enough teachers. There are certain subjects that we don't have. Nobody wants to teach Yoruba. Nobody wants to teach science and tech. We have math, English teachers. We don't have certain subjects. So how do you give them incentives to actually accept this?
Very good. What we put in place is this. The programs we are starting with are programs that are need-basis. And that's why the commissioner is going to be involved in the curriculum drawing up. So based on our needs at the states, the 65 programs we're starting with are the ones that are very critical for us as a state in that education ecosystem.
Okay.
Now, don't forget we have 18,000 plus private schools that we know. In total, we have over 40,000 private schools in this state.
Will you be compelling them to employ your graduates?
No, we don't have to compel them. They will compel them by the system. The system will compel them because of the quality.
People.
Because of the quality that we are going to shun out in the next few years. So they become the fulcrum of the market that we're looking at.
Yes, so I understand that specialization is very good when we want to focus on a particular aspect. And the first question I want to ask is, how do you convince other people? Because every other university has the Department of Education. That's this one now that is strictly for education is better for you. 1. 2, most people don't want to teach because they see teachers and they don't want to be like them. In terms of money, in terms of affluence, there was a time people wished their children to be teachers because teachers were respected. How do you intend to convince these young ones to go to school and read education that their lives will be better than what they see now?
Thank you. I'll speak for this governor, this commissioner, and my office as Education Ministry. We have changed that narrative as a state. Today, we are awarding teachers, we're giving them vehicles for doing so well across the states to motivate them. Those are the ones in the system. We're also setting up a process that we can help retrain those teachers in that same system. Now, we're not going to the foundation of it. What that foundation is, where we feed them from, the feeding process, that's the university. So from that foundation, we say to you, you have a path to your growth. You can get employment either with the state, because we are recruiting teachers every second. There's a standard ESCO memo that says once teachers leave, you replace. You don't have to come back to us in next school. So there's a market for you. And you see, let us also call a spade a spade. It goes back to the values we espouse as a people.
Right.
The values that drives and put money ahead of every other thing will not grow a society. Your values must go back to your foundation. I've seen teachers. I've seen very good teachers. Yes, I'm not supposed to be a teacher, but I'm very proud of those that are teachers.
All right, let me go on a quick break. When we come back, we continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So before the break, we're talking quite a bit on the University of Education, but there's also University of Science and Tech. What data do you have that informed the decision to have that science and tech?
Okay, thank you very much, Morayo. HND graduates. I'll give you a practical example. You apply to come into civil service in Lagos State. You apply with your peers that came in from the university. Your cap is level 14. You can't exceed level 14 except you do a conversion program. In a place like last year, you spend 2 years, 6 semesters to do a conversion. And once you do your conversion, you can now exceed level 14 to get to the peak, maybe 17, and maybe a PAMSEC. That is outright discrimination. Now, we also say to ourselves, we can't be a 21st century economy as encapsulated in the governor's agenda for the state, team's agenda, and you can't drive a process for change that will be in sync with what is driving for the future of Lagos. The governor has made it clear, I want to have a rail project that will run from Marina, Blue Line, to Okoko, for instance, and a red line that will run from Oyigbo to Alagbado. We need hands that will handle those techie things. And this is going to come in handy for us.
Okay.
And it's data-driven.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question again for this particular university because it's important. Facilities, infrastructure. We're talking science here.
Yes.
We know in the universities they have labs. With this university, you know, the story of Nigeria, we get mushroom universities, small buildings, you cram people inside. Is that the same with this one, or this is a bit better?
None of the two. Don't forget, they were about the best in their own categories. Lagos State Poly that became University of Science and Tech was second best in the country. So the same personnel are still there. So what we are doing is ramping up infrastructure for them. Sitting on over 300 hectares of land in Ikorodu, and they have a campus at Isolo and one at Surulere. And they have the best of infrastructure, human capital infrastructure. 60 PhD holders to start 33 programs to start with. So now for the second one, 126 PhD holders to start 65 programs.
Putting it in perspective, some of the private universities that people are going to don't have this number of PhD holders in their university.
These lecturers go to lecture in those universities.
Yes.
Good.
And then they have enough space for expansion. For the University of Education, combined, they have over 100 hectares of land they are sitting on. Combined.
Good.
And what we are doing is, the government made it very clear, their infrastructure will meet any of the best in the world.
But there's something you said. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So, you know, she mentioned PhD. I'm saying it's not by PhD. Because what we realized is that a lot of people who have studied in the past find it difficult to unlearn and relearn. They have this mindset and that ego that I am a PhD holder from Obafemi Awolowo University, and they are not taking in. So science and technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
What are the measures you're putting in place that those people are constantly evolving to be at par with world best standards? Because technology is the way forward.
For the future.
Yeah. So are we just going to leave them because they're PhD and then? So what's the plan?
You see, part of the demands they made of the states when we had a meeting with the unions, the staff, and the management was, please, continuous human capital development.
Okay.
I would say it's part of the deal. Now, they're going to reclassify them, don't forget, they are going to designate them. The peak for you as a university lecturer, or no, as a poly lecturer is chief lecturer. Now, you have to be designated to fit into that university nomenclature.
Yeah.
Associate professor or a professor. So we move forward from that point. But the retraining must be ongoing. And that is what makes you adaptable as a human being.
I know there's a huge educational burden, and even across the country. But you said earlier that, for example, last week gets about over 1,000 applications, right?
Yes.
And only about 100 and something slots
for a program.
For a program. Yes. The point is that what is the government therefore doing? What happens to the
capacity.
remaining? Because we have a lot of youth universities, but it's still not enough. So if you don't get in, what happens to you?
Well, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's mandate was very clear when he was running up the team's agenda. We must open up the educational space, ecosystem, to allow for access, to allow for quality of knowledge impacting. And that's what we have to do by doing this. LASU had a limited carrying capacity.
So now we have options.
Now we have two other universities to complement LASU.
Yes.
And luckily for us, they are specialized universities. For education, wow. For science and tech, excellent. So we have the space opened up now for Lagosians to give them more options. And luckily for us also, before now, we've done a comparative study of all the southwest states in the country, and we know how much they charge for their state institutions. So the fee would be very reasonable from the start.
Do we have time? Yes. Research is what is lacking in most of our universities. We have lecturers who have written 10 papers up and they're lying down on the shelves dry. Nothing is happening. No inventions. What is Lagos State planning to do, especially with these two critical aspects of education, to ensure that research is done consistently and the results of the research is used to solve practical problems? Is there any plan like that?
Now, that is for the governing council and the senate of the school to drive. That's why those that will populate the governing council are people that share the same great vision with the governor of the state. Because it's going to be governor sitting in council. And then the senate. Senate is just the vice chancellor, the DVC, deans, HODs, and the lecturers. So they will drive a template that we are going to help them fund. And we also, don't forget, we have the Education Trust Fund in Lagos State under my purview. And then we have TED Fund at the federal level, deductions from corporates to fund universities.
Research.
Now, yes, research, especially. Now, let me add this. TED Fund are recognized to these two universities. So funding for research, funding for infrastructure will come. But we are not going to rely on that at the state. We are driving the process. The governor made it very clear. He told them at NUC, he told them at JAMB, he told them at TED Fund, these babies will grow and they'll be growing on a very strong foundation.
Let me go back to the issue of ecosystem, because I think BC or somebody asked it earlier, but I want you to answer it again in a different way. One of the problems Nigerians have is that, okay, now you've opened up the space of education and we have options. But when they finally graduate, what happens then? Because I read recently in the papers where they're saying that Nigeria is like the new baby for technology development. Like lots of international companies are coming to Nigeria, especially amongst other African countries, to get us our technically savvy youngsters. So these are people that when they graduate with science, university degree in science and technology, how therefore do we utilize them? Yes, you said the trains, but which other of the system can they be absorbed into to ensure that there's a job waiting for them?
You see, let me say this. In a normal system, government should not be employer of labor. In a normal system, government should just create the enabling environment for private sector to uptake them. But as a state, we're not going to just do that. I was here some weeks back, and I said the governor has a program called the Job Initiative Lagos, where we go to the universities, penultimate and final year students, train them and retrain them on how to apply themselves, how to be entrepreneurs, give them access to our Lagos State Employment Trust Fund to see they could be entrepreneurs on their own. And if they can't be, they can always take them to the education system for those that go this way, the rest of it. And for those that go to science and tech way, I believe there's a job waiting for them. Let me give you a critical example of the story I heard. When they were to construct the Lekki-Ikoyi bridge, the bridge was there for about 6 to 9 months because there were shortages of underwater welders. And the governor then, Governor Babajide said, no, you won't bring from anywhere in the world. Let us train local hands. And it delayed the bridge construction by Julius Berger for 6 to 9 months. They trained them to be underwater welders. Today, the bridge is constructed, but they are earning something in the region of over 2-3 million a month.
Wow. From the skill they acquired.
From the skill they acquired. That's what I call developing human capital. And this governor, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has made it very clear. Human capital development is very key and a priority for him. As I talked about 21st century Lagos. You can only have a 21st century Lagos when you have the skill set and the people that are ready for it, both in health and both in education. And it starts from our primary to secondary and now our tertiary.
That is all we can take. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Updates on that. It was an important conversation to have because Nigerians and Lagosians must know the options now available for them.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the governor and thanks for having me.
All right, let's go on a quick break. When we come back, move on to another topic. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.